Hello everyone, my name is Jazz and today I'm going to show you how to make these Christmas tree decorations or ornaments. So what you need for this project, you need an air drying clay, you need a rolling pin, you need baking paper, you need at least one hard paper, hard like if you could make some cards, that hardness. You need some ruler, protractor, pencil, compass, paintbrush. You need a LED tea light, candle. You need some sparkles, sellotape, acrylic paint, a knife, sanding paper, some varnish, a little bowl with some water in it, cling film to protect everything and to work with, and any type of cutter you would like to use. So first we need to make two paper cone shape. One will be a template, the other one will be which you drying your air drying clay on it. So for this I wanted basically something closer and smaller which would fit around this tea light. So I measured the shape, the obtuse angle, what we need to do, 145 degrees the obtuse angle, and the radius of the circle would be 7.5 centimeter. So once you manage to do this with your protractor pencil, then you cut out this shape and you make another one, and I get back to you what we do with it. So once you have these obtuse angles for your project, you need to make the cone shape and using a sellotape. And I'm just using a white sellotape because I want to work less basically, and you just tape it around. So this will hold your clay project while it's drying. So it's important to seal it. Otherwise, if you don't seal it with a sellotape, it will mark your clay, the color of paper what you're using, and also it helps to take your clay project off this mold once it's dry. So this is an important step. So you just completely cover all this cone in a sellotape, with a sellotape, or you can use a plastic to make the cone shape out of if you don't want to cover it with sellotape, but it did work very well for me. So as you can see, we're covering it completely. Doesn't matter if it's not smooth because this will be the inside of the cone once it's ready. So this is ready to hold our clay project while it's drying. We put this aside and now we're working with the other one. So if you want to do more than one project, and also if you use just the paper like I do, better if you cover the whole paper on both sides with sellotape. So it's easier for you to put it on top of the clay and cut it around, and it doesn't allow the paper to get soggy and color and mark your clay project. It's quite annoying. So we're going to cover this piece of obtuse angle on both sides with sellotape, then we cut it around. So as you can see, it's shiny, covered in sellotape. If you don't have the white sellotape, that's absolutely fine. You just need to use more tape basically to cover this shape. So I covered it everywhere plenty, and I cut it around so it's kind of waterproof and ready to use. At this stage we're ready to work with the clay. So you need to protect your surface, and you need to get all the equipment ready to work with the clay. I have a water in a small bowl. I've got the air drying clay, the rolling pin, and I'm using one more sheet of cling film just to make sure I'm covering my work properly. I put an extra tiny piece of baking paper on top of my surface. I like working with the baking paper, it makes it easier. You have your air drying clay in your hand. You're making a tight ball and forming a good ball shape. And you placing it onto your baking paper. Then we start rolling it out. To roll it out, I'm using another little piece of baking paper just to make it easier and it doesn't stuck to me. And you always can check your project how it goes. My aim is to roll out about a 1/2 centimeter or 5 millimeter of thickness of clay. That worked very well for me with the project and dries reasonably quickly and still easy to work with. So as you can see, we're getting there. It's not ready yet. I'm not bothered if it's a little bit uneven. If you want to be perfect and you want to make it even, you can use a pack of cards on both sides, so you make sure you're rolling your clay out evenly. I am at the moment just eyeballing. Some of the places still thicker. There we go. I think I'm happy with the result. So as you can see, average about half a centimeter, here and there a little bit thinner, but I'm not really bothered with that. I'm happy to use my template. So this is where your shiny and waterproof template comes handy. You also can reuse it and you can make as many cone as you would like with this template. So what I do, I just place it over my clay and I'm just going to cut it around with a sharp knife. Take the excess clay off. You always can use whatever you left. For these little ornaments for Christmas tree decorations, I made an out of all the leftover clay. You can use any shape of cutters to make these as an extra decoration on your tree as you wish. So I put my clay away so it doesn't dry out and cover it. I take the template off gently, and here is my cone or obtuse shape to make a cone. So at the moment I'm not bothered about the edges yet. I will show you how to deal with that. So now we're just preparing this clay piece of clay sheet to be able to make a cone shape and to close it. So what you need to do, you need to use a sharp knife and just to slice about 45 degrees off on the one end of the clay, and you can just cut it in to make these ridges, which will help you when you have to join the two edges of the clay together. So one side is done. And this is why a baking paper is handy, because you can turn it around easily and you can do the same step exactly on the opposite side. So I'm just thinning out the clay basically on both edges. Cutting a little bit in, it helps with joining the clay. I'm not worried again this time at this stage with the excess clay. So now I need to join the clay into a cone shape. So what I prefer to do it in my hand. You will figure out which works better for you. You can use and start doing and going around the cone shape if that works for you. For me, it works much better if I just use my hand. As you can see, if you do that cut, you have much easier job basically, and it looks much neater when you're joining the clay. Here we are, we managed to join it. So this is the stage when I do put it on my clay, on my cone frame or template which we made. So the inside is not too important, but I just do check it, so I make sure the corner of the cone goes where the corner of the cone on your clay as well, and this will hold the shape for you, and you can mold it more a little bit around in here. So this is why it was important to cover it with sellotape, so make it waterproof. So this is the stage when you can smooth your clay down with using the water which we prepared earlier on in here, and you're using your finger. At the moment I'm just trying to smooth it out with my dry hand yet until I feel I need to. Okay, so here we are. I'm using a little bit of dab of water on my finger, one of my finger, and just smoothing out all the edges as much as I can. The paint what you're using usually and will cover some of these imperfections, but I just like to make it smooth before it dries. It is actually much less work and less sanding. Requires less sanding after the cone dries. Here we are. And also one of my advice, which I'm talking from experience from the previous cones I made. As you can see, doesn't matter what and how well you preparing the obtuse angle, the clay gets distorted and gets stretched in certain places. So you can see it's not really straight, but this is the best time to make your clay straight at the bottom, so it does stands properly on the table or wherever you put it without leaving a big gap underneath. So now I'm just going through with a knife and I cut it around as neat as I can to straighten out the clay. So I'm just finishing the edges to cut straight. Okay, seems to be okay. And maybe a little bit more there. Fine. So now, because I don't like sanding, I'm going to use my wet finger again. Wherever I made a mistake or wherever I need to, just to smooth and make a nice finish at the edge, and our cone will be ready to dry. And I'm going to leave this on this paper cone until it's dry. So the sellotape which we use to cover the cone will help us to remove it without any problem. So I'm just smoothing out the edges with my finger, and I'm putting this aside to dry. I would say at least for 2 days. The longer the better. But before we do that, I will show you. If you want to leave it like this, it's fine. But I decided, as you can see on my projects, to use these cutters, to the star shape one, to give a Christmas theme. We can use these cutters to make the star shape. So for this I advise you to leave it at least for about 10 minutes to dry, so all the water which I used earlier will dry off the surface. Then it's much easier to handle or to cut into any shape you want to. So 10 minutes time I will back to you guys to show how to put any hole or any pattern into the clay. So here we are. Once your clay project is a little bit drier, about I would say 10 minutes would make it, then you can use any of the cutters or any shapes you want to cut into your tea light holder. So for this you still need the water which we used earlier. It's absolutely fine, and you need to make your cutter a little bit wet to be able to work with it easier. So I just usually dab it in the water, and wherever I want to do the hole or the shape, I just pat it with my finger and make it a bit wet to be able to work better. So the paper cone is helping, gives a little support, and you can work against your finger. So I'm pressing against my finger, and I just make the pattern I've chosen. As you can see, it's really nice. And don't throw away the clay which you cut out. You can use it later on for another project or for any other decoration. So you just gently try to get it out, and you can see they will dry really nicely. You can color them, paint them, you can use them for any other projects. So you keep going along until you achieved the result what you wanted. So I have my last one to do, and I think I don't want to put any more holes in the tea light holder. So the smaller the pattern, the harder to make it. So this would be my smallest star at the top of the tree and the hardest one, but I managed to do it. So as you can see, here it is. So now you can leave your project basically to dry for 2 days, and I get back to you once we need to start painting and putting the sparkles on. See you soon. So the day is gone and my cone is dry, so I'm ready to demold from this cone shape. So it won't be really difficult, as you can see, because of the sellotape. So you just keep peeling it apart very gently, and when you think all on the base is came apart, then you just grab your paper and you try to very gently just wiggling and pulling it out from the cone, and here we are. So now you can see, even though if I try to be really good and not to leave anything behind, I still need to do a little bit of sanding. You can use a sandpaper or you can use a nail file, whichever works for you. At the moment I've got some sandpaper in here, so I'm just going around the edges very gently and just sand it down so it's not sharp. Also, if you feel your project is not really straight, because you still didn't manage to get it straight around on the cone, you still can very gently just put your sandpaper down and just gently keep rubbing until you achieve a straight line. It's much nicer when you put the LED tea light candle in. If you have a straight line, the light doesn't come out from underneath, only through the stars and the holes you made. So it just looks a little bit more neat if the base is reasonably straight. So here we are. So my cone is ready to be painted, and I tried without painting and just go straight with the varnish and sparkle. Didn't work out because the clay is kind of greasy, I would say, in certain points, and didn't allow my varnish to go on evenly. So I decided to paint with the base color you want for your cone to be. This one I'm going to paint white acrylic paint, so I just go through with 1 or 2 layers, depends on what your plan is. I will probably use, because it's already a white clay, I will just use 1 layer of white acrylic paint on top, then I will varnish it. You feel free to use any other type of paint you want to try. So for example, this project has been made with the silver color paint. As you can see, it did turn out really nice, basically. And I also made one tall cone you will see in the beginning of my video on the picture. And I covered it with a gold colored paint. I've already given that cone away for as a Christmas present to my friend. So let's crack on with the painting. You just paint the whole cone with the chosen color you want and let it dry. Then I will get back to you and show how to varnish and put the sparkle on. I'm ready to varnish my project. I sand it down, I painted white, and I'm just using a normal varnish, which will help me to stick the sparkle on. So I covered my project with 1 layer of varnish, and this is my favorite part because the sprinkle can come on. So I'm using a silver one. It just replicates me like if this would be a Christmas tree and would be covered in snow, and how the snow sparkles with the sun on the tree. So I'm using a little bit of glitter on my hand. It will go everywhere, trust me, the glitter, either you like it or not. And I put the tree on my hand, and I'm just keep sparkling it and rotating the cone as I go along. It nicely sticks into the varnish, and I will just let it dry with the sparkle on it. As you can see, I think I'm happy. You can cover it completely. You can use different sparkles. You can use for decorating before you varnish any color, metallic colors. You can use gemstones. You can use a colorful sellotapes or anything you fancy. I've just chosen this simple project, but feel free to go with your imagination. It's wild and never ending. So here it is. Once it's dry, it's ready to use. And I prefer to use a LED tea light. For kids it's much safer, obviously, and I haven't experienced to use a normal tea light. As you can see, the cone is closed on the top, so I wouldn't risk, the clay to get really hot if you're using a real normal tea light candle. It works much better, and my kids are preferring this even as their night light. I hope you enjoyed my project. I'm wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.